going to have her live feed as well. Her husband Mike is setting that up. Just so you know, my name is Mark Petzold. This is Katherine Henry, and we have our spouses Mike and Crystal with us, and we're going to have a discussion about everything that's been going on related to COVID, and we'll go from there. And so we're going to set the tone of this Facebook Live in an appropriate way. And getting a little direction from my producer back there to get a little bit closer. And yes, just in case you're wondering, this is not 6 feet. That's a little humor. Just keeping it real. So, anyways, we're going to pray, okay? And
I want to make sure before we pray. Mike, are we on too?
I'm looking for it.
We're going to double check that both feeds are going.
There's quite a lag.
Yeah.
Okay, you just moved. That's how much my lag is.
So this is really cool. You know, it's kind of neat to think that we're back, you know, not that long ago, this would have to be a television studio with producers and stuff, and it's more of a television studio than it is with producers. So we're doing this. We go appreciate your patience. It's also allowing some other people to join. Again, the cool part is we can record this and rebroadcast it, and it can be used over and over and shared multiple ways. And so when this is done, what I'm going to do, just so you know, is I'm going to upload this to YouTube as well, so that the link can be easily shared. Facebook Live can be kind of difficult because you can't go outside of Facebook to share. Not everybody has Facebook, so my producer is saying that we're still too far apart. So
I will also put it on stopcovidchaos.com. So my dad is the web administrator of that, and he does need some time off too. He's been putting in a lot of his work hours as well as helping me get everything set up with that website. So we just have to be patient that we make sure we've got the sound quality and everything, you know, everything was okay, and then my husband will make sure to get that over to my dad.
producer's still saying get closer. Anymore, I'm not going to be sitting on her lap.
Well, no, but seriously, as close as you can possibly.
We're having fun, folks, and this will be a fun video, okay? This is going to be, we're going to discuss law. Boy, isn't that exciting? But the truth is it's very real and it's dynamic, and, you know, we can have fun while we're doing this, so.
Are we on too?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So now that we're on both feeds, I'd like to start us in some prayer today. So hopefully we got enough of you live with us now so that you can hear the prayer as we go. Dear Lord, I ask that you be with all of us involved with this today. I ask that whatever information Mark or I share with people today is true, it is accurate, and it is your will that we are doing it. Lord, I ask that you guide our thoughts and our words and our actions, and please do not let us mislead anyone or speak mistruths or any kind of falsehoods to people today. Lord, I ask that we are blessed with no technical difficulties and that people are able to watch this and hear it, and that we can truly help people to understand both the facts and the law a bit better, and that we can open some hearts and open some minds, and that we can use this information going forward in a way that goes along with what your will for us is. Lord, I ask all these things in your name. Amen. Wow, that's really bright now. That was really... So, I'm not sure what you guys can see on that feed. I can see that there's a little bit of my chaos on my desk here in that feed. I do apologize, but I wanted to have pretty much a little bit of everything at my fingertips, depending on what the questions are. So the format is basically, there's some information that I just want to share, you know, overall, some questions that I've been answering over and over and over again in different comments and different posts on Facebook and in emails and text messages and phone calls. I'll share some of that information. Mark also has some information that he would like to share, and then both of our spouses will be watching the comments on each feed, so we're going to try to make sure we're able to field questions as we go along there too. I guess I would probably ask that any substance questions that you guys can hold off just a little, let us get going. We might answer those questions, and then if you still have a question after a little bit here, then go ahead and post those just a little bit later on. So is it okay if I get started, or would it?
I just wanted to state again, this is the nature of things, that we are now the media, and so this is a participatory event, and how you all can help right now is to share this video as we get going. The video that it did in Lansing, there's 1,500 people on there now. It'd be a long stretch from right now just because of the intensity of the moment, but just to let you know that this could really help. So to share.
So all right, trying to think of what the best way to start is. I think probably gaining an understanding of the basic legal framework of where we're sitting right now. So, as everyone watching this feed probably knows, here in Michigan, our governor declared a state of emergency on March 10th, 2020. It was 3 days later that President Trump declared a state of emergency nationwide. At the time that our governor declared the state of emergency, though, there was no national state of emergency declared. So by her declaring it here in the state of Michigan, it opened us up to the opportunity to receive federal funding for different aid packages and things, as well as be able to utilize forces within our state to be able to address the issues of COVID-19. Like I said, 3 days later, President Trump declared a state of emergency, and then we've had a series of executive orders being issued by her ever since. We had our first stay-at-home order come out on, school was canceled. That was the first big one. School was canceled on March 12th, about 11:15 p.m. or so is when Governor Whitmer declared that. That went into effect statewide for Monday, March 16th. And then it was the following Monday, March 23rd, that she issued the next big one. That was the first stay-at-home order that went into effect the next day on March 24th. We then have had a series of different orders. At some point, I don't remember the exact date, but there was Executive Order 2020-33, which she then rescinded Executive Order 2020-4, which was the original state of emergency. She then called 2020-33 the expanded state of emergency and declaration of a state of disaster. So there's reasons for doing that. Okay, I'll get into that later. So from that point, we actually had her state of emergency was set to expire on April 7th, because our laws in the state of Michigan, specifically MCL 30.403, required the state of emergency to end. You guys are freaking me out over there. Are we okay?
Nope, you're fine.
Okay.
Hey, we're getting thumbs up.
Oh, okay. The state of emergency was set to end pursuant to MCL 30.403, which only gives 28 days unless the legislature votes to give her more time. So on April 7th, the legislature met. They decided to give her more time. They extended the period of time until April 30th. And without any further extensions granted by the legislature, that would be the natural expiration date. Specifically, our law on point that I just referenced says that the governor must or shall issue an executive order or declaration terminating the state of emergency unless the legislature votes to give her more time. So because they did not do that on this past Thursday, April 30th, the state of emergency ended on April 30th. What's interesting about that, and I want to balance giving you guys some legal perspective without going into too much of the legal weeds, so to speak, to lose you. But so as of this point, I believe, the last we checked was maybe last night, there are now 70 executive orders that have been issued so far in 2020. 70. All about COVID-19. I just want to let that sink in for a minute. 70 times the governor in our state has said, I need to exercise not only my normal powers as governor, but I need to exercise additional enhanced police powers over 10 million people in the state of Michigan. 70 times that was said.
Catherine, I think a lot of the people there now, you know, you've given a lot of information and you've backed it up referencing specific documents. It gets pretty heavy.
It does.
For a lot of people. So I think, you know, a lot of the question is right now is where are we right now? What does this mean to them? Are we currently under are we beholden to executive orders in Michigan right now? What's the current status?
The quick answer is legally, we are not under any state of emergency or state of disaster right now, specific to the state of Michigan. So legally, no. The executive orders by Gretchen Whitmer right now have no force and effect of law. To give you more specifics, though, so you're not just thinking it's just my opinion, unfortunately, we have to get back into the legal weeds of this. So, just to finish painting that that picture of the series of events that happened. The state of emergency, the stay-at-home order that was in effect, put into effect last Friday, it was 2020-59. That's the one that says we have to wear masks, and it goes into specifics of all different kinds of things. I believe that was the one that did reopen back up the different portions of stores that had been closed under the prior order, which was 2020-42. So since we were at the Capitol, she has issued at least 4. There's 4 I know of. Executive order. Actually, no, I take that back. There's 7 that she issued. Mm-hmm. There's 4 that are of importance. So legally, just to tell you what she did, just in quick summary from each one. 2020-66. Side note, Mike, can you help me keep water going? Thank you very much. 2020-66. She declared the state of emergency terminated. She also declared the state of disaster terminated. The state of I want that to really sink in. So forget legalese. The state of emergency and the state of disaster are terminated.
So what does that mean to them, Crystal?
Now that was just before midnight, correct? That she did that, or pretty close to that timing, from what I've understood?
I thought it was closer to 8 o'clock.
Oh, was it? Okay.
In the evening.
All right.
Honestly, at this point, I don't think the timing really matters. And on these executive orders, with the lovely governmental transparency we have, they do not say the date or the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Fun stuff.
Okay.
But as far as the analysis goes, that's not necessary. The important point is that when we have a sorry, we just had an
we're not in San Francisco.
Yeah, it was just the one box that was moving there, not the whole room. So I guess I want to give you an example. So a state of emergency, well, on a side note, this should never have been called a state of emergency under our statutes. I'm not talking about President Trump's state of emergency. That's a different legal term. But here in the state of Michigan, if you look at the definition of what a state of emergency is and a state of disaster is, It should have been a state of disaster. Now, does that change the analysis here? No, because whether it's a state of emergency or a state of disaster, the end result is the same. There's still the same period of 28 days. There's still the same requirement to get legislative approval to extend it, etc. But if we look at the example of state of disaster, in the statute, it gives specific things. So an epidemic is actually one of them, but wildfire or, a storm. So let's say, and she did do this in 2019, we had the polar vortex, and the state was shut down. I believe we had that state of emergency in effect for 3 days, if I'm correct on that. A lot of school districts were closed much longer than that, but I believe it was between 3 and 5 days, I think, that we had the state of emergency. The point being, so when you have a snowstorm come in, the snowstorm is there, or flood. That's going to be a better example because, areas around here we might get heavy rains and whatnot. So, and we've seen, at least in the Grand Rapids area, some significant flooding in recent years. Mm-hmm. So you have the river waters rising. You have significant flooding issues. So the state of emergency might be called, or state of disaster is what it should be for that particular thing. When the disaster or emergency has naturally ended, then it's done. So even if it's only a 2-day period of time, then the governor has to declare it as terminated. Okay. But what our law says is that they knew there might be something that goes beyond 28 days, but they wanted to make sure that those additional police powers are not just available to any governor for an extended period of time beyond what would be necessary.
So that kind of set up the showdown then on Thursday.
Yes. So it's designed to be able to handle an emergency or disaster that would go longer than 28 days. Right. There's just a specific procedure in place. Right. So the thing is, though, let's think about that flooding example. So just to make it a super easy analogy here. So let's say it had been a flooding thing. And on Thursday, let's say it was 11 o'clock at night. It doesn't really matter, but let's say it was 11 o'clock at night. She issues this Executive Order 2020-66. The state of emergency is terminated. The state of disaster is terminated. So, okay, well, there might be some flooding in areas, but our resources are now put in place that we're able to address the situation. We're able to get relief to the homeowners. We've made sure that we have, we've brought people to safety. We have medical services available if necessary. We have, the Red Cross or other, agencies are there to help and assist. Okay, so the disaster is terminated. That's essentially what she did here. So then the very next order, 2020-67. Oh, mind you, when she terminated the state of emergency and the state of disaster, she actually specifically was terminating them and referencing Executive Order 33, where she was declaring them. So, Executive Order 2020-67, the very next one, she then states, I order that the state of emergency remains declared. Wait, what? So we had an emergency situation with this flood or coronavirus that was then brought down to a level that was manageable, so it's no longer considered an emergency. Doesn't mean the threat is over, just means it's no longer an emergency under our laws. And then right after that we're going to say, oh, but wait, it remains. The same one remains. It's terminated, but it remains. Okay, this is not a whole bunch of legalese. This is just common sense. Okay, flooding controlled, flooding not controlled. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. Then right after that, Executive Order 2020-68. I now declare state of emergency and state of disaster across the state of Michigan. Wait, these all happened like boom, 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 boom. This is not like a big period of time in between each one. So the state of emergency is terminated. Wait, but the state of emergency remains. Wait, but now I declare a state of emergency. Say what? Okay, that seems really backwards to me. Typically you would have a declaration, Then you might have an extension or saying that the emergency remains. Then you would terminate it. That's not what she did. And then for kicks, we have Executive Order 2020-69, or is it 69? Yes, 69. Is this? Oh, that's the temporary reuse, temporary restrictions. Let me see. That's the Emergency Management Act.
Why don't you go ahead and look for a second? What I want to just appeal to everybody here that's watching, and thank you for tuning in on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Just remember to please share this video. We're trying to get the word out. The whole idea is to try to boil this thing down and actually how does this apply to you is the ultimate goal, and see what's going on. But one of the main things is to try to get the truth out, okay? And there's a lot of information that's either missing or not accurate. So again, thank you all for watching.
So just to give you the recap of how can any of these orders we just went over, how do they have authority? What's the legal authority behind them? So, what? Oh, okay. I don't know your sign language yet.
I know.
I understand it.
So, the only way that any of these executive orders at all have the full force and effect of emergency power. So, let me back up. Our governor has the ability to issue executive orders, but without an emergency. But that ability is significantly curtailed or limited to basically things like reorganization of the executive branch of government. Okay? So when she has the executive orders being issued due to a state of emergency or a state of disaster in place, then she has this much bigger, broader power in play. So all of these that we have here, these are not executive branch reorganization orders. These are executive orders issued based solely and legally upon that emergency power in place. So we have the common sense problem that the state of emergency, by her own words, was terminated. State of disaster terminated. But then it remains. Well, something that's terminated cannot remain. And then it was redeclared afterwards. Well, if it remained, you wouldn't declare it. And if it was terminated, you wouldn't say it remains. So we have a logic and common sense problem here. Significant legal problems result from that as well. But regardless of all of these, okay, like I mentioned earlier, MCL 30.403 very clearly states it doesn't matter if it's under subdivision 3 with a state of disaster or subdivision 4 with a state of emergency. Either way, when the governor issues a state of emergency, or state of disaster, I'm going to just keep calling it state of emergency because that's what the media does, but I'm including the state of disaster when I say that. When the governor issues declares a state of emergency, she then has 28 days to maximum for that power to continue before she has to then ask the legislature for an extension. And we gave the extension to her once. The legislature approved on April 7th to give her the extension to April 30th. And everyone knows the legislature did not approve to give her another extension. So midnight April 30th, there was not a legal extension to the state of emergency at all. No legal authority to extend the state of emergency or the state of disaster. Therefore, the basis upon which all of these executive orders is based is gone. So she doesn't have the authority. She can just keep with her pen, keep on going, but the authority behind that is gone.
So there's the people out there, everybody's wondering what they're supposed to do, okay? Conservatives by and large want to consider themselves law-abiding, But I actually myself, I've been corrected because, there's been times where, there's a saying from our founding era. It says, basically, when illegal law becomes, or when injustice becomes law, rebellion becomes duty, essentially. Okay. So the question is where are we at right now? What are you doing as you live your life? Are you law abiding, or are you actually being not law abiding? If a if a business felt they wanted to open up tomorrow, are they being civil disobedient, or who's being civil disobedient?
Exactly. It's a very good question. So, oh yeah, and Crystal too, please.
Sorry, just dry mouth.
Meanwhile, I have 4 liters of water because I drink a lot of water every day.
Just saying. So who's being civil disobedient? If you want to open up tomorrow, are you being in the right, or are you being rebellious?
So it's a very important point, because I did have a conversation with a state rep just yesterday. He happens to own a restaurant, and I called him up and I said, hey, is your restaurant open? Now the executive orders are no longer in effect. And he said, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't do that, Catherine. That would be, I'm a lawmaker. I'm not a lawbreaker. And I said, okay, I can understand that, but we've known each other for a few years now. I hope you would know I would never ask you to just go out and break the law. And he said, well, no, I know that, Catherine. I said, okay, well, let's think about this. If you open your restaurant, if you run a private school, if you have a real estate business, landscaping business, you have a cupcake shop, you have a nail salon, you have a barber shop, and you want to open your business today or tomorrow, but you don't want to break the law, good news for you is you can do that. You can open and not be in violation of the law, because there is no law, there's no legally enforceable mechanism that says you can't do that. We have meaningless executive orders that say you can't do that, but those have no force and effect of law right now.
So actually, when it comes down to it, if you go to open up your business tomorrow, are you're saying that you're not being lawless,
right?
You're actually abiding by, and I guess there's probably a gray area here, and this is a question that you can punt if you want. Okay. But who's being civil disobedient here? Is it us, or is it Gretchen Whitmer?
I would say there's no civil disobedience at all.
Okay.
I would say we are civilly obeying the law, and that Gretchen Whitmer is definitely not being civil, and she's not obeying the law. So when she takes, let's see, was it Wednesday's press conference at 3 p.m., I tune in to listen and hear the updates. And she has this long parade of congratulatory remarks for all these Democrat leaders, and has a nonstop series of comments berating and attacking Republican leaders, including our federal leaders. That's not civil, and it's not appropriate for a press conference from a governor. That's not a campaign, rally for her. What was even worse is to have the lead, was it the president of one of our big, I forget the 6 letters that are in the acronym there, but a labor union president had microphone time during a press conference on the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And then he had all kinds of wonderful comments to say about the Democrat leaders, and a whole bunch of not so nice things to say about Republican leadership. So I would say that's not exactly civil. It's certainly not appropriate. But now, are there people in extreme on each side? Absolutely. There always is on any issue. But does that speak volumes about everyone that's on the side of of wanting people to acknowledge that there is no state of emergency in effect.
Well, hold on just a second.
Okay, so my first a couple questions here.
Mm-hmm.
So why are the police enforcing them, or have you seen police enforcing her executive order since Thursday?
I personally have not seen or heard of any single law enforcement officer or agency in the state of Michigan enforcing these illegal executive orders. Now, I'm not saying that it hasn't been happening. I'm saying I haven't heard of it yet. I can also tell you that I am personally reaching out to every single law enforcement agency in our state. Have not done it yet because, well, I'm one person.
Yeah.
But I do have a team of wonderful people that have been working with me on gathering email addresses, fax numbers, whatever we need to be able to reach out to those agencies and make sure that they know the law. Because if an officer is going to enforce an executive order here, I don't want to necessarily assume that's because he's part of some evil plan. Gretchen Whitmer knows darn well that she doesn't have the legal authority to do this. But if you have a police officer in a local law enforcement agency, he might be doing it because he thinks it is lawful, because that's what he's told on the news every day. So I'm going to make sure to get that information in front of, directly in front of those law enforcement officers.
So something that happened on Thursday that probably wasn't seen or known, you know, Katherine actually went and spoke with the police officers. You know, one thing to know is that these guys
During
the event.
Yes.
And the reason why is because these folks they're doing a job, right? They're not attorneys. It's interesting because they're law enforcement officers, but not necessarily, knowledgeable about the law. So they could actually use some advice and, so that's something to keep in mind. And I would ask you too, Katherine, to help equip the folks out there. Is there a simple way to, I'm going to say, equip the people? So here's the fear, right? You go and you do something, and let's say you open for business, and then in comes an officer. And the officer is maybe not informed, most likely not informed. What can the people out there do? And again, this is advice, okay? If you want to get personal legal advice, hire an attorney. We're just trying to give an opinion and do an equipping to help ease your mind so you can go about your business.
So it just depends on the certain situation. First of all, I'm going to ask you to try your absolute best in all circumstances to remain calm and respectful, because this is not an easy situation for anyone. And even if an officer appears to be callously disregarding your constitutional and statutory rights to go about living your life, I just don't want you to assume that they have evil intent about that, okay? So just do your absolute best to approach them with respect and kindness and clear words and understanding. So as far as the information that you would say, what would you say to them in those instances? I am going to be posting on my Facebook page and the website stopcovidchaos.com copies of all the communications that will be given to the legislators. I mentioned earlier some information that I'll be emailing directly to legislators about this. I have information I'll be emailing directly to our law enforcement agencies and officers. I have information that will be geared towards just members of the general public. All of that will be posted on those two places. And so you'll be able to access that. Now, it's for those people that are around here where I'm at, or, I would have the physical availability to go. I did tell, for example, a hair salon owner that if she opened and if the local police were giving her a hard time about opening, as long as I was around, I would drive on over there and I would talk to them myself. And if I wasn't there, if I wasn't available, I told her to give them my information and ask them to speak with me first before trying to enforce it in some sort of way. So that's an offer that I would make for anybody that's close to me. As far as what you can do, you can print off this information that I'll be giving, that I'll be posting online. You can print it off, have copies available, and try to share that with the officers when they're there. And really, at this exact moment, that's all I've got for you off the top of my head. I'm going to constantly try to give you tools to be able to properly assert your rights, because this is not civil disobedience.
Right.
I'm advocating civil obedience.
That's a key thing. And actually, that phrase alone, Catherine gave a lot of information, but just if you can remember, this is not civil disobedience. This is civil obedience. Officer, I respect that you think you're doing the right thing, but the fact is that there's more to it. And I just want to interject really quick, because it's a conversation, because we bring two different flavors to this video, right, Catherine? But let me rephrase that a little bit different. We have two different specific callings, but they do overlap. I am very concerned about the law, but I'm not the expert that Catherine is. But my background is one of being a Tea Party leader and so on. And I want to state that I get a lot of questions like, when is the next event? What should we do next? And I maintain, what you do next is you act normal. You go back to work. You embrace the fact that you are being lawless, and you're not even acting civil disobedient. Not that there isn't times for that, but what a gift, actually, that you have the clarity that you can go back to being normal. And I encourage you to talk to your friends and your loved ones. So what this next rally and protest looks like is you talking to those that are in business around you. You encourage them. You understand that if the multitudes go out and start acting normal, they can't do anything. Okay, we got partly one thing I do want to convey is the fact that we in this country and in the state have a specific role, and we bring our faith and we bring our knowledge and we apply it every single day, and so that's important. So there's different things that I notice as triggers, if you will, where the mask, for example, wearing the masks. There are people that feel compelled to do that, and yes, please.
Actually, let me pause you on that, because I have that as a question.
Okay,
a specific
sure.
question. So a couple of things, three things that have come to mind that I want to address. Okay. So one question was, can a business be successfully sued if someone gets sick doing business at that store? First of all, I want to say to every attorney that might be tuning in and looking at this, do you seriously think that you would be able to prove, with all the legal elements in place, no matter what particular lawsuit it was, would you be able to seriously argue and meet that burden of proof that if your client got coronavirus, which is akin to the flu, that you would be able to prove in a court of law that your client got that virus from a particular store? Let that sink in for a minute. Okay, because you can't. It's impossible.
That's a beautiful thing.
You can't trace where you get the flu. You can't trace where you get the coronavirus from. We have speculation, sure. Now, does that mean, to get to this, the question was, can you be successfully sued? The answer to that is, I don't think you can, but there's never a guarantee in the court system. Obviously, that's why we have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court at times, because when you go to the trial level, something goes wrong. You might go to the Court of Appeals and they just don't get it. And so you go all the way up to the next level. Okay, so am I guaranteeing you that, first of all, that you won't be sued? No, I can't guarantee you won't be sued because somebody hits your car and then decides that you caused the accident. Just the same as I can't guarantee you wouldn't be sued if a neighbor kid came over to your house, jumped on your trampoline without your permission, and then broke his leg. I mean, if they want to sue you, and even if they don't have the right to, they can sue you. I mean, so I can't guarantee you're not going to get sued. Can I guarantee you that a lawsuit would not be successful against you? No, I can't guarantee that. But is there common sense that would support such a claim? Absolutely not. Would the law actually support such a claim? Absolutely not. So that I could tell you in all confidence, but I can't guarantee you the outcome. With that, do we have to wear masks into stores? So the very short answer is, whether you think the executive orders are legally in place, whether you think, gosh, you know what, the state of emergency legally ended, therefore all these executive orders no longer have the force and effect of law, it doesn't matter. In any event, the answer is still the same. And the answer is unequivocally, no, you do not need to wear a mask when you go into public. Okay? So, you want to have specifics, I'm assuming, to know how do I back that up? Well, first of all, Executive Order 2020-59, which was in place until Thursday night, and then we have Executive Order 2020-70. It was actually, this one right here. Both of them, in the same exact paragraph. Paragraph 15A is the one that requires you to wear a mask. First of all, it says right in there, if you are medically able to tolerate it, you can wear a face covering. Okay, if an individual is able to medically tolerate is the language. Okay, so first of all, there's already on its face a whole class of people that are not able to wear these masks and therefore will not be wearing the masks.
Just to clarify, this is past as well, right? You're talking about what happened in the past. Right now, this is not actually.
So what I'm saying is, no matter how you slice it, whether you're one of those people that thinks the executive orders are still in place, or whether you realize the true status of the law and you realize these are not in place, either way, the answer is no, you don't have to wear a mask. However, I'm now going to address the people who believe the executive orders are still in place.
So this is the pretended legislation, if you will. You're addressing the pretended legislation.
Well, I'm addressing something that was previously in effect legally. But the way it was done, it was actually legal, and I'll explain why. But I'm explaining that with Executive Order 2020-59 and the requirement to wear a mask in there, and how it was done, actually was done arguably legally. It's the same language in 2020-70. So for those of you that are tuning in that think that is still in place, I'm addressing you guys right here. Okay, so paragraph 15A in each of those orders is the same paragraph. Paragraph 15A, technically there was a typo and it says paragraph 15.1 in Executive Order 70, but it's referred to later on as paragraph 15A, so we're just going to call it that. So paragraph 15A is the one that says you have to wear the mask, but it says if you are not medically able to tolerate it, then you don't wear one. So we already have a whole class of people that are not going to be wearing masks anyway, okay? Then, if you go to paragraph 16, whether you're looking at the one, if you're thinking about something that happened, 4 days ago, or you're thinking about, so that'd be the older order, or you're thinking about something now because you think the current order is in effect. Same thing, last sentence, paragraph 16, no individual is subject to penalty under section 20 of this order for violating section 15A of this order. Meaning, if you don't wear a mask, we're not going to do anything about it. That's what the order says. So even if you're in the camp of thinking that Gretchen Whitmer currently has the power to issue these executive orders, even the one that's in effect right now, says it's not enforceable. Okay? Okay. So, it means paragraph 20 is making it a misdemeanor. Well, by saying that you are not subject to this misdemeanor charge, there is no law enforcement mechanism in place to make you wear a mask when you are in public or at a store or at a restaurant, okay? So because of that, no private employee or other person can therefore try to think that they're going to enforce this, okay? So
just to be clear on that, I get this a fair amount. The difference between, or I should ask you, is there a difference between the governor telling you to doing something like you just described, but if you go into a business and the business says, look, if you want to come into this business, you need to wear the face shield or any other kind of protective equipment, if you will. No shirt, no shoes, no service. How does that fall as far as there's the governmental But then there's also a private entity. How does that work?
Yeah, excellent question, because that's a perfect segue into, real quick, Mike, I just don't understand what the third question on this page was, so if you can maybe follow up with that person.
It is.
Okay,
It's
if
as
you want-
written, so
Do you want to put on the Facebook, what the question was and ask for clarification, so the person who wrote it might see that and be able to send clarification?
Yep.
I want to make sure I'm trying to answer all your questions. So the question that you just asked,
After you're done.
okay, the question you just asked goes to what many of you saw on a news story last night about what happened in Big Rapids at the Menards. Now, to be clear, that particular instance was April 29th, so it was during the period of time that the executive orders were legally in place, okay? But the end result is still the same. So the store refused service to, in the news story, it was caught on camera, 2 separate individuals who I did not know. I've subsequently met one of them briefly in Lansing, but I still haven't met the other one. So anyway, 2 individuals went in without a mask close to the same time and were turned away. The question was, is there the ability to do that? Can a store owner turn somebody away for simply not wearing a mask? And then as a follow-up, how is this not the same as no shoes, no shirt, no service? So not wearing a shirt has been long deemed to not be related, first of all, to any kind of disability. Okay? Same with shoes. There's public health codes that go into play for making sure, like, if you are going to a restaurant, that you, if it's an indoor part, that you have proper footwear. Does that mean every single restaurant is required to have customers wear shoes in order to serve them? Well, no, because I think we've probably all been to some sort of a restaurant or bar on a beach or at a theme. I went to a bar, snack, whatever place that was in the middle of a pool at, I think it was Six Flags or something. So I definitely wasn't wearing shoes. And I had a bathing suit on, so I didn't have a shirt. So really, we could spend all day going down why that's not exactly the same, but the analogy is not, that is not an equal analogy to the situation. So the issue of wearing masks, first of all, there's no legal authority allowing the masks to be in an executive order right now anyway, right? Because the executive order has no legal bearing right now. Even if you thought that it did, though, we have the provision right in paragraph 16 that says it's not going to be enforced upon anyone, but paragraph 15A already tells us that we recognize people can't medically wear these sometimes anyway. So you have right there 3 reasons why people might not be wearing masks. Aside from that, there's discrimination laws and equal protection laws and things of that nature that would come into play. So I actually created, not sure, let's see if I can see. Oh yeah, I probably didn't get near as close as I should have on mine, but that's fine. I'm sure you guys could see. It's posted on my Facebook page. It's also on stopcovidchaos.com. It is basically a thing that you could print off, you could take with you, you can show other people. In fact, let me read it real quick.
Okay.
I'm not going to read all the laws because that sounds boring and you fall asleep. But it says, I am exempt from wearing a mask pursuant to, and I do say, Executive Order 2020-70, Section 15A and Section 16. Do I think that executive order is even legal in the first place? No, but even if someone thinks it is, there's a paragraph in there, 2 paragraphs in there that talk about how they're exempt. And then pursuant to a variety of federal statutes, state statutes, U.S. constitutional provisions, and state constitutional provisions, somebody who's going to deny you service or try to make you get service in a separate way, you know, that whole separate but equal thing that we heard about, that doesn't really fly. Yeah, that kind of idea. Or who's going to not allow you to participate in an activity if it's if the business is or organization or club is some sort of activity, as long as it is deemed a place of public accommodation. So it is something that is generally available to the public. They cannot discriminate. They cannot make you wear a mask. They cannot ask you why you're not wearing a mask. They cannot harass you. They cannot ask you for what medical condition, or if you have a medical condition. They can't do any of those things. So pursuant to all those statutes and things, what it says right here is that discrimination against me is illegal and punishable by criminal penalties, monetary damages, civil penalties, and or attorney fee awards. Now, are all of those things going to apply in every single situation? No, I'm not saying that the people in the Menard situation, that the store employees are necessarily going to be criminally charged. I'm not saying they're not. What I can tell you is that there is a plethora of legal authority out there that says, as a store owner, as a business owner, as a golf course owner, as a employee of a restaurant or a shoe store, you have zero right to tell someone that they have to wear a mask. You have zero right to ask someone about it. You have zero right to harass someone about it. If you work at Costco and your company policy is that people need to wear masks as
Condition of employment.
a condition of employment, that is a whole separate issue, but maybe I'll get into that in another video. But that if you want to recommend to customers that, if you have a sign that says we recommend to customers that you wear a mask, you know, if it's something that you would do in the flu season, okay, but you know you can't tell people in the flu season they have to wear a mask to go in your store.
Can I speak to this for just a
Yeah.
second? So here's the deal, folks. We got to understand something here, and that is that, you know, our freedoms were bought through the blood of soldiers and also through the blood of Christ on the cross. These things were given to us in many different respects, and we can bring when we walk into culture and into these stores, we bring that with us. And so first of all, I want to state again, as you mentioned, let's act in a way that is becoming, okay? Here's the beautiful thing. We truly don't need to jump up and down and scream and holler and do whatever. We have the truth on our side, and we walk in with a certain degree of authority when we do that. This here, thanks for putting this together, Catherine, this helps give you a degree of comfort. And so when you show this thing to a store manager, you know what they're going to be? They're going to be scared, just like the state police officers were. A lot of those were scared on Thursday. You can see it in their eyes. Talk to them with love. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. We don't have to go off half-cocked, but it is very important that we do it. Okay, we are on the clock as Americans. We are privileged to be alive during this time. And while bullets are not flying, we are a steward of the bullets that flew. So understand that you have a mission right now. You have a mission. This isn't just about you, okay? The truth is what you do is not only honoring those that sacrificed in advance, you're actually helping those coming in future generations and yourself as well. But the thing is we are pushing the normal, if you will. We're pushing the normal. The law is the law. Natural law is certainly natural law. But how we view it and how we value it is very critical. If we don't value the law, if we aren't willing to actually step forward and enter back into society and do so in a way where it's honoring to Christ as we strive to be Christ-like, if we aren't doing those, I'd say we're not being a good steward of everything that's been given to us, including, and maybe most importantly, being born during this very important time in our nation's history. So I just encourage you to accept your role and your duty, and thank you for the equipping that Catherine is offering that you can do so with a degree of confidence. So.
And so not only do we want to encourage you to be willing to step out and do the right thing, and just by living your own life according to your actual legal rights, civil obedience, but I want to encourage you to go a step further. I want to encourage you to think about how this is impacting others. Mm-hmm. So those of you who were there at the Capitol on Thursday inside, or happened to see the Facebook live stream at home or saw it later, heard me kind of get a little bit emotional about all the different kinds of people that are being impacted by these executive orders in negative ways. So those things are still things we need to consider, and the people hurt in those ways are still people we need to be concerned about. However, I want to come back to Deborah. I want you to understand some basic key facts about that situation. So for those of you who are maybe in the middle and you're like, I don't know, I could go either way. I mean, I don't know for sure what the law is. I don't want to make waves. Or those of you who are on that far other end that think people like us are just evil and we all should die of coronavirus. Let me speak specifically to you guys, okay? I want you to understand a little bit about Deborah. Deborah, as I spill water all over, I'm super graceful. Deborah went into that Menards by herself. I'm going to get into that in a minute. Well, no. How about now? Deborah went into that Menards by herself because she's had a series of significant traumas in her life. I'm going to try to say this without getting choked up. She's a fighter and she's a survivor. And she does what she can to take care of herself. And she's had a series of significant traumas, things done to her, and some other things, some cancer and some other things that have happened to her. And she has been surviving it all. But she has a daughter who, my understanding is that she is a mother of 4 and can't always be there to help her mom. She has a son who would probably be right at her side every minute helping her. But he is one of those people you just mentioned. He is an active Army man. Mm. He is out serving our country and fighting for these very rights, for his mom's right to be able to go into a Menards and get something she needs without covering her face or doing anything else like that. So she went into Menards on her own. I ask you to view the video if you haven't seen it yet. I believe it's like a walker that she could turn and then sit down in. I believe, I don't want to say it like all the wrong terms. I believe there was an oxygen tank and all the hookup and everything to provide her with air so she could breathe while she's in public. She went in to buy one thing. She went in to buy a fuse for her oxygen concentrator. The woman needs to breathe. This woman who is a survivor needs to breathe and needed a little piece from Menards so that she can continue to breathe. She was stopped right at the front door, harassed, told she could not come in, and that despite the actual language of Executive Order at the time, Executive Order 2020-59, that she was legally required, and it was company policy, that she'd be required to wear a mask, despite the fact that she medically can't, despite the fact that there's no enforcement mechanism requiring us to do so, despite the fact that people like her son are fighting for our freedoms, which have resulted in constitutional provisions, statutory provisions, statewide and nationwide that allow us to have these freedoms, beside the fact that, well, that big guy upstairs already gave us quite a bit of freedom. No one even asked her in Menards is there something I can assist you with? Is there something I can get for you? She doesn't have internet access at home. And I believe she has something where it's not too easy for her to access things on her phone sometimes. Anyway. So she went to the store like a normal human and went to buy some things she needed to breathe. And they could physically see that she had some physical limitations and did not even bother to ask if they could help in any way, and simply refused to serve her. Okay, so if that already doesn't tug at your heartstrings, then I'm not sure what else really could. But she goes home, okay, and doesn't do a lot on things like Facebook or social media or email. She does like to be able to go online, though, and use her phone to have contact with her son, who is serving our country, okay? And she goes home, and it doesn't take long before her phone starts ringing, Facebook and email and things start blowing up, and people are giving her death threats. The woman who needed a piece of machinery or piece of equipment, a fuse, to breathe, is getting death threats. So for those of you who have asked me in recent days why it's such a big deal that people would have to wear a mask in a store, I want you to think about Deborah's son, who's currently serving our country and fighting for our ability to have these freedoms. I want you to think about Deborah herself. I want you to think about all the things that she has overcome to get to the point of where we are today, and how she can go in a store and be turned away from getting one little thing that she needs to breathe. I want you to think about that. And she's not alone. So that gets to why we should care about it. Oh, and by the way, this poor woman, she can't bring herself to picking up her phone. She wants to be able to keep in contact with her son. How can she do that when she's getting calls and Facebook messages and emails and death threats? She's afraid to pick up her phone. What is wrong with those of you who are doing that to her? In fact, every single person that's watching right now and every single person that's going to watch this in the future, I'm going to ask you to pray for her. I want you to pray for Deborah. I want you to pray for her that she gets peace about this, that she has the Lord's hand protecting her, that these death threats stop, that she is allowed to be able to go into a store and get something that she needs to survive without being fearful of what someone is going to do to her. I want you to pray for her. I want you to pray for her son. I want you to pray for her daughter. I want you to pray for the people that have been attacking her and giving her these death threats, that they can see the light and see what it is that they are doing. And I want you to pray for every single person who is in one of these positions, in a different store, in a different house, in a different place, anywhere else in our state. I want you to do that.
Just really quick, I just want to take a second just to show the fact that a lot of times we try to compartmentalize things and sterilize things, and essentially a lot of times people see politics as being in one category and faith being in another, and so on. And what I see is truly what we're doing is fulfilling the Great Commission. And when we aren't fulfilling the Great Commission and preaching the gospel to go into all the nations, this is the result of it. This is pain. It's not this, that, and the other thing. It is all combined. And it's our duty, as we're doing today. We're bringing our influence into this arena so that we can have civil society, so the Deborahs aren't treated like that. And also so that we have wisdom when we are dealing with people who may believe different than us, that we can talk to them with faith or with love, and that they can see it. So I just really, these moments in history where there's these great jumps and cultural shift and governmental shift that's at least attempted, it's an opportunity. We got to seize this moment to see how important it is for us to step in our identities as children of God and as Americans. It's a beautiful thing. It's a hybrid. It's not either or. It's all. Okay.
Just Dave Agerman has just informed us that the AG Nessel has sent memos to the police, and I'm assuming state because that's all she has coverage over. Correct? Anyway. To enforce the lockdown. What can you tell us about that? And this sets up a fight. And again, we're looking at two different things again. What is our best way from both of you to handle this situation?
Sure, Dave. The other question you sent to my husband wasn't good enough. You had to throw me that one too. Let me do this though.
Actually, Deb did this one, but
Okay. But there's a couple of super quick questions I can answer more quickly. So let me get to those real quick. Will you work with those, will you or those that work with you be on the Michigan news stations anytime soon to explain that the executive orders are not in place to a larger audience? Number one, I actually did do a Zoom interview with Fox 17 last night. I do believe a teeny little clip of what we did was aired. I believe I'm supposed to be on in a more expanded capacity in the presentation tonight. I will definitely reach out to the radio stations I've been on in the last few weeks and get back on with them. I have been, actually I've been reaching out to all of our local news stations and even some national news stations and trying to get this information in front of them. I just hadn't heard back. So I am trying to get this information in front of them, definitely. And I will, I'll keep at that. The quick one here, so there are no longer any executive orders that are binding. That is right, because I don't see any that have been issued this year that relate to anything that she can do outside of her emergency powers. Like I mentioned before, she does always have that authority to do traditional or normal executive orders, and she has not issued any of those, at least in the last, before the last 24 hours. I haven't looked in the last 24 hours. So any of these that are based on her emergency powers have zero legal effect right now. So hopefully that answers that question real quick. And then why, kind of the same thing from a couple different people. Why is the legislature not announcing we can go back to work? Why do you think the legislative leaders haven't explained to people what I am now explaining?
That's a good question.
So the... Mike, I think you can have those back. I think I answered all those. So here's the thing. You have some legislators who have been out there posting on Facebook, going on radio, having phone conversations, emails, text messages with people saying, we are now legally free, okay? There is no state of emergency or state of disaster in effect. And so therefore, all of these executive orders have legally gone away. And they are telling their constituents that. There are those that are in the camp of not quite understanding, like I mentioned, the one that I called, who thinks that the executive orders are still legally in effect.
You're talking about a state representative.
A state representative.
Still thinks they're in effect.
Yep. So there are some in that category that just, I don't know why they don't realize what's going on. I don't know if they haven't read the actual text of all the statutes involved. I don't know. I even sent some case law to help explain some of these, how they all tie together. I don't know if they're just not reading what I have sent them with that. I do know that they're getting bad legal advice because they have been told by legal counsel, whoever that is, that the orders, at various times, they've been told incorrect things about these executive orders. So I don't know what their most current directive from legal counsel has been, but I could tell you that it has been incorrect in the last few weeks, And I can tell you that some of these state reps, they're afraid to go out on a limb and challenge the governor. They're afraid to make waves. Not all of them, some of them know darn well that there's no legal authority to these orders, but they're afraid to challenge because they don't want to make so many waves that they won't be able to win re-election.
Can I interject here real quick? So bringing my influence into this conversation, this is where it's very important for you. The importance of the political will of the people. Okay, as you bring your influence and you create a pressure in society, as you will, that they feel. Matter of fact, Catherine received some input as we were coming into Thursday. Oh man, my battery's dying. Mike, do you have another?
Yeah.
I have a cord in my bag. Boy, this is like repeat of last Thursday.
No, Mike.
I'm sorry. Anyways,
Mike.
So
Mike.
right, Crystal has it. At any rate, oh, I'm sorry. My goodness gracious. You build a political pressure that goes into culture and goes into governors. There's a plug behind us.
There is a plug behind you, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to start over here in just a second.
Yeah, you get the top one, yes. Go ahead and take it.
Commercial break.
Is ours going okay?
It's good. Another good reason why there's more than one feed. So, at any rate, we bring political pressure. You got to understand how important it is that happens, okay? That we assert ourselves and that basically the legislatures feel some pressure to move our way. In my view, that happens at all levels of government, from your city to your state to your national. And folks, that is so critical. This is our identity as Americans. Government gets its authority from our consent. It is so important that you know that. We are so obsessed about what we hear about the government, about our legislators and everything else, that we miss our responsibilities as citizens. We have a very important responsibility. And again, this is another opportunity to reacquaint ourselves with our heritage, and that we take back what is ours, and that we are a country whose government is formed on we the people and the power of the people. And so we are not a raw democracy, but make no mistake, if we're quiet and we don't give room for the legislators to do the right thing, they will be more apt to get swayed. And one last point, and those that follow me know, I've probably heard me say this a million times, but hey, it's from the Bible, so it's good to repeat, right? We elect people according to Exodus 18:21, and that would be that they're able. That means they're able to decipher law, they're able to financially, they're able physically, whatever, that they're able. Number two is God-fearing. How important is God-fearing right now? If they're God-fearing, they don't really care what the party leadership says or what the governor says or anything else, because they know there's a bigger element. And three, that they're truth-seeking. Okay, Catherine has spent today and other times developing an outline of truth. What is truth? And then four is that they hate a moral gain. That means they really don't like people taking bribes and things of that nature. So I apologize for this interruption here, but just really trying to make this point that's so important. It's so important that we get our identity back, folks. This is a time. These are times that try men's souls, right? We are not to be sunshine patriots, even though it's a beautiful day outside and we can be sunshine. But the fact is that we have a job to do, okay? So encourage one another to do that. And then also, I encourage you to fill the blank, okay? The question about the media, what I was thinking about is you don't understand that the fact that the media is not really not saying we can't use them, but folks, it's up to us to spread the word. That's why we're doing this Facebook Live video. That's why we're empowering you. because it's so important that you do those things. So, anyways, sorry about the disruption with my phone again, but I hope that's resonating. Can I get a thumbs up? Is it resonating? Anybody? All right, thank you. Awesome, cool.
Are you going to be able to set it back down, or that blue?
I'm gonna hold on to it.
Well, I do have, Mike, where's that blue phone
got it.
holder?
So
Because
yeah,
it has a hole at the bottom so that the cord can go through.
Catherine's a professional, but I am grassroots. So
Well, you're professional, just not.
I'm professional grassroots.
Plug it in through there, maybe.
Okay, thank you. All right. Does that resonate with you, Catherine?
It does. I'm just thinking of two sets of things that I know had been questions. Do you have any other? Dave's question is going to have to wait a second because that's a long.
That's fine.
That's a big.
It's one of those big ones, and I know that he said it's one of those things that we're going to be able to face here eventually. We're going to possibly have to face if you're a business owner, etc.
Yeah. Okay. So, in general, does Dave Agema's question change what I said to you? Does it change any of the advice that I'm asking you to do in terms of being respectful, being kind, bringing the truth and love to these people? Nope. Does it change the fact I think you should have something like this with you? Nope. Does it change the fact that I'm saying the executive orders have no more legal force and effect? Nope. Everything I said, I still stand by. It's just the complexity of answering the specifics of that question. I just want I could see it being a bigger question, so I just want to address some of the things I think might be smaller first. So I want to make sure, Mike, did you have any that were lingering questions that I needed to answer? Okay.
And I guess Dave Agema, if you have, if you see that there's open ends or something, maybe just ask the question more specific, or we don't want to leave anything, undone or uncovered.
So, right. So, and probably any question that you've asked, I've already answered in the hundreds of Facebook comments, Facebook posts. People, just even in the last 3 days, I've had people ask me so many things that you have.
Okay, so if the legislators bring a case against the governor, will it go straight to the Supreme Court or a lower court first?
You want to repeat that?
So the question is about how is the case going to, excuse me, if and when the legislature chooses to bring suit against the governor, what is that going to look like procedurally? I don't have the exact answer off the top of my head because I don't know what the legal strategy with the particular claim is going to be. I mean, I have my guesstimate or my assumption, but I certainly haven't asked Lee Chatfield himself what he planned with that. So what I could tell you is that there are times when we get to go, most times we go directly to the trial court level. That'd be district court or probate court or circuit court. There's sometimes, like with a court of claims action, that it would go to the Court of Appeals first. And there's rare times that we get to go right to the Supreme Court in a case. So I don't know what the actual legal claim that's going to be made is. So I don't know then what the matching appropriate procedure would be. So I don't have an answer for you on that. I'm assuming it'd be something that would be brought to a higher level court in the first instance and not be stuck anywhere at a trial level court. But I just don't want to guarantee you that because I don't know what the specific cause of action is going to be. So unless I see anything pressing from the audience, so to speak, I have two things that I've been asked over and over and over again on Facebook. So I want to make sure I'm answering that for people. Well, first of all, let me tell you, for anyone who has just come in, well, it's hard now because I'm trying to look at cameras too.
We're going to do the best we can.
So there's two, sorry, what was my train of thought? Oh, okay, I just want to let you know that I have that stopcovidchaos.com website. All the documents that I've been sharing on my Facebook page, I will be getting uploaded onto that website. Videos, posting on that website. Links, I have information straight to the CDC sources, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Michigan.gov, World Health Organization, information directly from expert immunologists and phlebotomists and ER docs, and studies that have been done on various things by medical professionals. I'm not citing things that come out of, it's just a Fox News article or it's just on CNN. I'm not citing, something that I just kind of heard on Facebook and I ran with it. I'm actually going to the legitimate sources. So all that information is on there. All the legal information is also on this website. So I have mentioned at the very beginning, we kind of went through a whole bunch of legal stuff, legalese, and there's even more that might come into play. People that have heard, well, my state rep said this part of the law says the 28-day limit doesn't apply and whatnot, and I could try to answer some of those questions right now, but let me tell you that all the specifics are in a quite lengthy document that I wrote and published on April 17th. This is available on my Facebook page so long as they keep it up, because we've had issues where they're taking it down and they're not letting me copy and paste the actual direct link to the PDF anymore. And so because of things like that, it's now also available on stopcovidchaos.com, which, just to be clear, is stopcovidchaos.com. The law is fully explained in here, and don't worry, it's not like a big book that you have to read all the way through. It's frequently asked questions, so there's 22 questions that were commonly coming up, and quite frankly have been continuing to come up as people are trying to process all this. Some of these questions were posted right by state reps. Some of these concerns were posted right by state reps or government officials. Others were just people of the members of the general public asking questions. All of that information is on there. Also, if you've happened to see my speech at the Capitol outside on Thursday, or were able to watch the video that's posted to my Facebook page and to the stopcovidchaos.com website, I do go over quite a bit of the information in there as well. So I don't want to leave questions unanswered, but if you feel like you missed something, there are 2 sources real quick that you could at least get some more information. One of the big questions, though, that I've been asked is about, well, she keeps talking about these 2 laws. We have the 1976 Emergency Management Act, and we have the 1945 Emergency Powers Act, and she says she has different power, she's now saying that they're independent legal authorities for her source of power. That's a huge clue that something's wrong, because that's not at all how our laws work. So, specifically, see, I have so much stuff in front of me that I want to make sure I'm addressing.
While you're searching and keep going with your thoughts, couple other things. Someone asked, how do we hold the media accountable without government involving itself as a means of protection and defense of freedom of information? And another one was concerning the lawsuit against the Governor Whitmer. Won't it take basically 30 to 90 days? And by that time, we'll either be broke or it'll be all over, is what, the question is. What is the possible timetable if that were to occur?
2 big questions.
2 big questions.
The first, holding media accountable.
Correct.
Okay. So, yes, I'm gonna get to all those. So real quick, in general, when it comes to having these 2 statutes, our laws have to be read together. Okay, so we don't have the ability to pick and choose which laws we want to enforce, and we don't have the ability to decide that I'm going to take this part of the 1945 law, and then I'm going to take this part of the 1976 law, and then I'm not really going to pay attention to all the parts of both of them, because that doesn't allow me to do what I want to do. I'm just going to do, we don't cherry pick. That's not how this works. And then she made an interesting, quite laughable comment on the, I believe it was Friday at 3 p.m. press conference, where she said the 1976 law does not supersede the 1945 law, because if they had meant to do that, if the legislature in 1976 intended to supersede the 1945 law, they would have just repealed it, and they didn't. In fact, there's a provision in there, 30.417D, that specifically gets to this. But in any event, I don't think anyone's ever claimed that the 1976 law superseded the 1945 law. In fact, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they are both, the whole act of 1976, the whole act of 1945, they're both in full force and effect. And they have to be read together. And an important point that must be made is that the 1976 law spells out a timeline, right? 28 days that she has before she has to ask for legislative approval for an extension. Some people have thought the 1945 law says she doesn't have a timeline or a time limit. That's not true. It's just silent. It doesn't say you can use this power unendingly for the rest of forever. It just doesn't talk about that. In fact, look it up, please. 10.31, MCL 10.31, MCL 10.32, and MCL 10.33. That's the entirety of that whole piece of the act. Okay? Not a lot. There's maybe, I didn't count them, maybe 15 sentences in total. It just doesn't cover a lot. Okay? So it has to be read in conjunction with what was passed in 1976. In fact, you also have to look at the fact that the 1976 Act those statutes are within the Emergency Management Act. Specifically, was created to address all the specifics of, what kinds of additional powers she can have, and what kinds of things she should be doing, and what kinds of additional liability protections are in place for medical providers and frontline workers in a situation like this. Yes, I just said that her executive order that gave additional frontline protections and protections against liabilities was totally unnecessary because that's already in statute. Yes, I just did say that. But anyway, so we have all of that, and then the 1945 law is literally under the portion of our laws that talk about what executive powers are. So it's basically just giving us the signal, hey, a governor has this power, this power, this power. Oh, and by the way, in times of emergency, they have this power. And although the 1976 law wasn't written at the time that was put into place, it's clear that this is just telling us what kinds of powers, and you look to another place of the law for any specifics. Well, this piece has another area of law with specifics. And our Supreme Court has said that all statutes relating to the same subject must be read together, even if enacted at totally different times. Well, I don't know how it gets any clearer than that. I mean...
Yeah. So they're the same, even they're looked at the same, even though they're written vastly different time.
And as Speaker of the House Lee Chatfield has pointed out numerous times, if we don't read these together, if she's allowed to just create executive orders whenever she wants to, and for any length of time, regardless of if there's an approval or not from the legislature, if she's allowed to completely erase laws that the prior legislatures have properly enacted and that prior governors have signed into law. If she's allowed to take a big fat eraser and get rid of all of that, why would we follow laws at all, really? Because there's no point. And I'm pretty sure our whole country was founded upon the concepts of checks and balances so that we don't have dictatorships, we don't have monarchy, we don't have any of the things that people were running away from when they came here and they wanted freedom. So anyway,
this is just an important point about this element, again going back to the fact that the law really doesn't mean anything if we don't value it. So this is where we contribute to our form of government right now. So the people that are gray about the whole mask thing and what you should do and so on, understand the importance of, we are on the clock right now. This is a very important time where the culture is shifting and we're moving away from a representative form of government to a dictatorial one. And so this is how it's kind of important that we that we make sure that we hold close to this. I know there's a lot of red tape here, and Catherine's going into great detail, but it's actually pretty simple in the end, right? That the governor has limited authority, and it's important that as she tries to grab it, or any other executive or whatever in government, that we actually push back against it. So while you consider the risk of maybe not wearing a mask or whatever, understand that there's more at play than the safety of you and the safety of the other person. I'm not saying that you shouldn't care about that, but understand this is vastly more dynamic than will the germ slip through that cloth mask or not. Do you understand how a mask is being used to shift what's called the Overton window, which is the perception of reality? Again, this is a great moment of history where we can look at this great change over just a few weeks, where all of a sudden, if anybody were to wear a mask in public, you're like, what's up with that person? To now, if you're not wearing a mask in public, people are thinking, what's up with that person? Do you see it? And do you see how a mask, while it can be argued about a physical element, that there's vastly more to a mask than just the physical justification for it? How it can be used as a tool to actually further a narrative and further executive overreach and so on. So.
A couple of points real quick. I'm going to ask any media who's watching, do not contact the woman that I mentioned about Menards. Do not go and ask her for an interview right now. I'm telling you that as her attorney. Do not talk to my client without going through me. That's very disingenuous that during the course of this, where you know that I'm sitting here talking to you, that you're going to use this time to reach out to her. I don't even have words for that right now. How about let's be a little bit more genuine, and if it was that concerning of a story to you, you think you would have done some interviewing with her prior. But please, at this point, do not contact her. If you're in the media, please do not contact her. You can send an email to me if you'd like, and I can reach out to her and discuss that with her, okay? So anyway, to wrap up the point about how the two laws need to be read together, first of all, I want to point out, some people have asked me what my legal position, how do I get the legal position that these two laws have to be read together, that the governor can't just rely on the 1945 law by itself. Well, first of all, I just told you a bunch of why it can't. Second of all, our Supreme Court, since at least 1930, has held that a statute must be interpreted in a manner that ensures that it works in harmony with the entire statutory scheme. So again, we have laws on the same topic. It's like laws of driving. You have a law for wearing a seatbelt in one part of our laws. You have a law of that you have to obey all posted speed limits on another portion of our laws. You have then laws that you cannot consume an abundance of alcohol or drugs and get behind the wheel and drive. Those are all in separate, distinct statutes. They might have been enacted at entirely different times, but they are all part of the same statutory scheme. And we all have to use common sense and realize, yeah, when we get behind the wheel and we drive, well, we're a seatbelt, and we have to make sure we didn't drink too much, or we didn't take medications we shouldn't, and we do have to follow the posted speed limit. So it's kind of one of those things there. We're going to take all of the laws on the same point and read them in harmony. And also, to those that I have asked, how do you think she has this authority? How can you tell me that she can look at 1945 by itself and not consider the time limits put in place clearly by the 1976 statute? And not a single person, attorney or otherwise, has been able to, in fact, the governor has never identified any legal provision that gives her that unfettered authority. Absolute executive power, such as what she's trying to exercise here, doesn't exist in the U.S. anywhere. It's not in any statute. It's not in any constitutional provision. Let that sink in for a minute, because no government agent or government employee or elected official can do anything in that capacity without there being some sort of legal authority to do so. The government doesn't just have a bunch of rights. We do. In fact, we actually have more rights than what are even enumerated in our statutes and our Constitution. There's actually provisions in the Constitution that say that. But it's, in all seriousness, we have all the rights. The government has some responsibilities, but their responsibilities and their authority and their power is derived from specific provisions of the Constitution and of statute. And there is no statute that gives any executive unfettered and unrestrained absolute authority.
This is a great opportunity to actually think about, again, this isn't all about us, okay? So it's not all about my personal safety or your personal safety. There's actually a bigger issue at hand. And if you think about it, what happens in Michigan, it's not all about Michigan. What happens in Michigan actually does affect the other states. Now, it might be more of an influence, but a precedent. But you think about how important it is, and you know what an honor it is actually to have this fight in our own backyard. So it's, again, it's not all about us as individuals. It's not even all about Michigan. It goes much bigger.
So I'm going to try to be speedy in answering the next 5 questions that were essentially posed. One is, and it was a topic that we've touched on, is the idea of masks. Just to be clear, it's not just a legal right, it's a common sense thing, okay? So in addition to people who medically can't wear masks, in addition to people who might have PTSD or some other anxiety or a phobia that would prohibit them from wearing a mask, it's also not physically safe or appropriate. For example, when we were at the rally and we were in the Capitol and we were waiting to get into the chamber of the House of Representatives to participate in that legislative session, we were met by this wall of blue. Okay, so all these state police officers were standing there and they all had masks on. Some had these medical masks that you see, traditional medical mask that's looser right here. It's just kind of, they loop it over the ears and it kind of puffs out right here. It's got the pleats. Some had more of a dust or carpentry or construction mask that is more circular right here. It's got the metal piece right here, and then it's got more of a thinner elastic that keeps it on. Some had the cloth masks that were made probably very lovingly by someone who cared for them, okay? One of the police officers who had the one with the metal piece right here, by the end, well, I say the end of the day, it was probably like 3 o'clock when I was pointing out to him that his mask had actually worn into his skin right here. I can't imagine that he had been wearing that mask for very long. It's not something that's been enforced for very long. Can you imagine if he has to wear that mask every single day, 8 hours or 12 hours, whatever his shift is, continuously while coronavirus is still here? Yeah, okay. So aside from that, there's not even any scientific or medical data that shows wearing masks is actually going to prohibit the transmission of coronavirus, COVID-19. There's not data out there. Did you know that? Because they get on TV and Dr. Khaldun says you got to wear a mask to do this. Where is that information coming from? Specifically, I have a document that I will have posted as soon as my super wonderful and amazing dad gets it up on the stopcovidchaos.com website. Dad, if you're watching, can you make it a priority? So it was put together by Dr. Martin Dubrovik. He is an expert immunologist. He's got a boatload of credentials I won't bore you with right now, but I did make sure we put it at the bottom here. And it is the same doctor I indeed quoted at my in my speech on Thursday. And this information isn't just from him. So he's an expert immunologist, but he is citing information that's coming from the CDC. He's citing information from some studies that have been done. And then in addition to that, there is in fact information coming straight from the World Health Organization. And the long and short of it is non-medical or cloth masks could increase potential for COVID-19 to infect a person if the mask gets contaminated by dirty hands, if it's touched often, or kept on other parts of the face or head and then placed back over the mouth or nose. You know, so like almost everyone we've seen wear them. When you speak and then you're having trouble communicating, so you take it off and you hang it on one ear, or you've seen people that some of the state troopers had them kind of hanging down here for a little bit, or you know, they have an itch and they pull it down and they're scratching, whatever, okay? All of those normal things that we're used to doing that maybe we might not even realize that we do, all of those go into this idea that it's going to actually contaminate. Besides which, we have a whole plethora of medical professionals that tell us the disposable masks are not designed to be worn all day long. They're not. And the cloth masks, let's just put some common sense out there. Let's say you have a cloth mask, or two, or even three. How often do you wash that, and how do you wash it? Are you putting it in your washing machine? Are you actually making sure that it's getting clean? So even if you have three, you'd have to do at least 3 loads of laundry a week because, well, there's 7 days in a week, right? So yeah, let's just use some common sense about that. You can't wear a mask to work and then the next day wear the same mask to work without having washed it. But then again, even if you wore the same mask from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., is it sanitary? Okay, no, the answer is no. So I want you to take a look at the studies that are referred to here. I want you to take a look at the fact that the quote that I just read to you is directly from the World Health Organization. It also references a study showing respiratory infection is increased and not reduced in healthcare workers who use cotton cloth masks instead of the medical masks with the time limits and different sanitary requirements that they have to change them out every so often. And quite frankly, the WHO says, the World Health Organization says, there's not enough evidence for or against being able to have people use them in the wider community. For everyone to just be out in public using these masks, there's not one single piece of solid fact that says this is going to help us stop the spread of COVID-19. So keep all that in mind. So this information will be on the website. It'll be on my Facebook page.
All right. We're going to give Katherine a second to breathe here and kind of go through some notes that she has. Mark, is there a spiritual role fear is playing in the controlling man and in the church? And would you agree? And go ahead and expound, please.
Well, it's one of the things I think is very important. Part of understanding our identity is also understanding the identity of the enemy. And the identity of the enemy, especially when you get into politics, is oftentimes considered the other party, which could be Republican or Democrat, depending on your position. It could be several different things. So the spiritual warfare, how does the enemy work? Okay, the enemy is a liar and he's a deceiver. A lot of times he'll use a certain amount of truth. Hold on for just a second. What's that? Go ahead and speak.
Oh, in the beginning, remember we started out with like he very, I shouldn't say delicately. He very quickly started with a spirit of fear.
Okay, so Crystal's saying as a couple, we're observing everything going on. Because we've been in the Tea Party, we've been into politics, we've been seeking and developing faith, we've been at the crossroads of all these things. We sensed in our spirit early on the spirit of fear that was all over this issue, so there's what you feel in your spirit, but then there's also what we're witnessing in front of our eyes. Now I'm going to triangulate that for just a second. Katherine just went through a whole bunch of criteria about masks, the good or the bad or whatever. So for me, from my perspective, and the filter I use, is I recognize right away the lack of justification and the careless application of it. I also understand the importance of the manipulation that can be used. And honestly, if you don't think that the powers that be don't understand how to manipulate masses and how to further their agenda, I mean, come on, people. let's be real about this and how powerful. Think about, from a spiritual standpoint, you put a mask over your face as a sign of submission. So you see these people walking up and down the sidewalk under a state of submission. And not just that, let me ask you this, and I'm going to identify you with as a person right now. When you see a person with a mask on, do you feel just an element of fear for just a moment? No matter how strong you are in your faith or whatever, do you sense that spirit of fear? It's very palatable, and actually, once again, this is a great opportunity. I want you to just sit back and just study that. This is like the founders use the term self-evident. Our rights are self-evident. I love that term. The fear is self-evident. How the devil is working is self-evident. It's right there. Crystal, do you have any thoughts on that?
Okay, so you got the initial feeling, and then it was a continual workup from the media, from Fauci, from anyone you would hear in the media, anybody you would talk to. There were definitely talking points to keep ramping up the fear. So
the unity of message, the furthering. There's a Rules for Radicals from the 60s, and actually this goes back a little bit further, but there's a saying, the issue is not the issue. The issue is the revolution. So the issue is the mask. Do you wear a mask or not wear the mask? While we're busy talking about the meat and potatoes of the positives and negatives about wearing a mask, it's not about this. It's not about this. It's about us being submissive and participating, and instead of us bringing our salt and light into the world, we're bringing a submissive nature into the world. Crystal.
It's you think about it, you put your hand over your mouth to cover, to keep someone from speaking out, right?
Yeah.
As Christians, we speak out, we declare, we pray, but we speak out. Speak into things. Yeah. So when we are covered, we are literally being covered.
Right. Yeah, it's very powerful in many respects. It's more powerful than an armband, in truth. So I guess I ask you, as a believer, if you're a believer, do you recognize the power of the forced or coerced, however you want to use it? If you can't recognize a degree of warfare in the face mask, I don't know what to tell you. You should. I recommend that you spend some time praying about it. So I hope that answers that question.
Is it a good time for me to answer some questions? Okay. So,
battery's dying still.
You have a ton. It's this one. You have 69% on this if you want to use that.
It doesn't work that way.
Okay, I'm just saying.
So what is the Republican Party doing to stop this? Dictatorial behavior? I don't know. I'm going to say nothing.
What should they do? If you can answer that.
I've seen them talk about compromise. I've seen them talk about wanting to work with her. I've seen a lot of them just following her. So a concern that I have is that they're even still talking about this being, a serious epidemic here. The numbers from the government organizations, and I'm talking mostly CDC and from Michigan.gov and Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the numbers are not what they tell us they are. My website explains that. My speech explained that. I have a 10-page document that focuses more on the CDC side of things that's already published out there. It explains that the numbers are not what they say they are. So when we hear that over 4,000 people have died in Michigan so far from COVID-19, that's not true. It's nowhere near true. When we hear, I want to say it was like 67,000 or something like that was the newest number of people that have died in the U.S. from COVID-19. That's not true. The number's in the 30s. It was like 34,000 or 38,000. I just looked at it last night. We need to have accurate data to be able to look at this. So if we're going to call something an epidemic where, let's just focus on Michigan. So Michigan has, as of the 18th of April, Michigan had 1,408 deaths from COVID-19. That's including laboratory confirmed and assumed cases, which is not medicine. Assumptions are not medicine, but anyway, certainly not science. You have to, confirm and do testing and things like that, especially where testing is available. But even assuming we're including these assumption cases as well as the laboratory confirmed cases, that was 1,408. But we were being told there were actually 2,308 cases of confirmed deaths in Michigan. Even so, the numbers we actually had in Michigan that day for people that died of heart disease were 5 times greater, more than 5 times greater. The number of people we had dying from cancer just so far in the same period of time, okay? I'm not talking about comparing a 12-month window of people that died from cancer to a 2-month window of people that died from COVID-19. No, I'm talking about the same window of time. Cancer has taken almost twice as many people as COVID-19. Stroke has taken as many people. I can't even, off the top of my head, those are the ones I can remember. There's a lot of other causes of death here that we could be treating. Suicide in our country is already a leading cause of death every single year, and it is here specifically in Michigan. Then you add lockdown and job loss and increased instances of domestic violence and child abuse and neglect, and the hampered ability to get resources from food banks or places to get proper medical care or routine regular medical care. The instances of mental health, it's exponentially worse now, and suicide gets worse. So we can't just look at okay, COVID-19 is so awful, it's killing so many people, it's so deadly. It's not any more deadly than any of those things. We need to remember that. So we shouldn't be focusing all of our efforts on having this joint task force or whatever and all these super, extravagant measures done to combat COVID-19. COVID-19 is not going away. It's like the flu. It's going to be here. It's going to come in cycles. It's going to come every winter. Pneumonia and flu deaths will, ebb and flow. COVID-19 deaths will ebb and flow. It's just something that's going to be here. It's naturally going down no matter what we do. It's going to go down now over the summer months because as the federal government just released within the last week, direct sunlight, heat, and humidity are great instant killers for this virus. So when summer's here and people are outside and it's hotter, the virus has less way to be transmitted and it's not going to harm people as much. So we need to focus on what reality is.
Can I interject just really quick?
Mm-hmm.
So boiling this down really, really quick, and so it's applicable to you. And Andrew asked a question about fighting the media. Okay, so now this is Mark Petzold, the Tea Party organizer, community organizer, person of faith, speaking. First of all, everything she said is true, and after you've done some work and you do some research, you can confirm that your heart is right. Okay, so that's all good. But here, the thing is really quick in your spirit. You recognize the spirit of fear to start out with. So, Gretchen Whitmer is on the TV, or your local news channels on the TV, what the guy speaking with a mask and doing all these other things. First, very simply, all that justification and everything that she just said is backing up for the fact that there's a spirit of fear. Recognize it in your heart. Recognize it, and then Andrew, how you fight it is you mock it. Okay, their words are their own enemy, or it's a weapon against them because of the fact that we do have a lot of truth out there that counters all of this. So, truthfully, one way we can fight this thing is to expose how pathetic it actually is. So, frankly, identify it as fear. There's a gentleman that I followed, Steve Dace is his name, and he uses a word that's might not be digestible to a lot of people, but it fits. It's called panic porn, like panic pornography. Recognize the panic porn, okay, and then expose it for what it is. What they're doing. What they're doing when Gretchen sits up there and doesn't reference any data, but she says, we have sound data, as opposed to the rest of us that don't have sound data. Recognize the fear, reject it, and just, Gretchen is furthering her panic, Crystal.
So when your health department goes live, like in Kent County, we go live, start asking them the questions outright on the screen. You know, that's one thing you can do very quickly.
Yeah, chime in on
those.
Yeah.
It make our media actually ask the questions that need to be asked.
Here's a question you can ask your health department. Ask how many deaths are actually, when they go on there and they say, gosh, in Kent County, I don't know what the number is. Let's say it's 100. How many of those 100?
Not that high.
I have no idea. I'm guessing.
I didn't want to panic anybody.
Yeah, that's just me just coming up with a random number off the top of my head. What number of those deaths are actual they're assumed deaths, and what number are laboratory confirmed? They need to be able to answer that. Then, when you get that answer, follow up and say, okay, so how many? Let's say your county has 100, right? Ask them, okay, so some are laboratory confirmed and some are assumed. So how many were actually coded under 7.2, the ICD code that the World Health Organization says is specifically for assumed deaths for COVID-19? And how many were actually coded under 7.1, which is the World Health Organization's ICD code for laboratory confirmed deaths? Okay, so you can ask them those things.
So what were those two again? 702?
7.2 and 7.1. And don't worry if you guys don't have anything to write it down with, because I have all of that information in the stuff that's already on the website.
I think she's typing it in, aren't you?
So all that. So those are some easy questions to ask them. Ask them if if pneumonia deaths, and the ICD code is specific just to that. If pneumonia deaths that the doctor has said on the death certificate are not COVID-19 related, if those are being counted in with the COVID-19 deaths, because they have been. That's what they're calling provisional numbers, okay? Those are some easy questions you could start with that's not going to be too easy for them to answer.
You could just ask very simply, too, just to keep it simple, is why are you not discussing all the different kinds of deaths, including increased suicides? That's pretty easy to remember, right? So the understanding that there's a lot of duress in our society because of the lost businesses and so on. Very easy just to get on there and frankly troll the message screen and say, why are you the fact that you're only presenting half of the data really disqualifies everything that you're saying, because you're just furthering fear. And I reject it. Reject the fear. Don't reject it right on the screen. As a matter of fact, maybe that's all you need to type is, I reject the fear that you're promoting right now and the message feed on these live broadcasts.
How about some of the hypocrisy? So when you see, it's kind of like when I was interviewed by a news anchor back in 2015, 2016 at a contested city council meeting. The news anchor came and he interviewed me, and he had a nice suit coat on and a button-down shirt and then sweatpants, because he was only going to be showing you half the picture. Well, what about the news anchors now that go around on camera wearing their masks, and then as soon as the camera cuts, they take the mask off? If you've seen that, take a picture.
Yeah.
Take a video. Show people that this is all for game. This is just to, I don't know, to sell stories, to sell the fear. Make sure if you have the ability to call them on it, call them on it, because we should be about the truth. Now, I'm not saying harass them. I'm not saying give them a hard time. In fact, don't even make it personal. That could be something that's a directive from their employer and they just want to keep their job. Don't make it personal. Make it about the fact, okay? But to answer two questions real quick that we had gotten a while ago and I started to answer. On the idea of what is the Republican Party doing to stop this behavior, and I got to the point of saying that I've heard them saying they're trying to work with her and do compromising and all that. Let me tell you this. Look at the law, as I fully explain in these documents, okay? Look at the CDC facts, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services facts. Look at the facts that come from the World Health Organization and these expert immunologists and phlebotomists and other individuals, ER doctors, okay? Look at the facts, not from me. It's not my studies that are done. I'm not seeing the patients, okay? Look at the information that's coming from government and from medical professionals. Then ask yourself, should we be compromising on the data? Should we be compromising on our freedom? Should we be compromising on that? No. And guess what? In case those of you don't know much about what I do, I actually do a lot of mediation. I've been doing mediation for 14 years, and it's been a huge part of my practice for quite some time now. I've done thousands in the last few years. I believe in having people resolve conflict and finding common ground and being able to compromise. There is a time and place that we need to do that. In fact, in most instances in our lives, we need to be able to do that with our neighbors, with our friends, with our spouses, okay? I needed a mediator when Mike and I were arguing about how to set up the cameras. No, I'm just kidding. But it's a true concept that we have in every aspect of our lives, right? Well, that doesn't apply here. We have clear data that says what isn't working and what the death toll isn't really looking like. And we have clear law that says these executive orders are no longer legal at all. Plus, we have all these things called our constitutional rights, okay? We don't compromise on those. Compromise was already made on the law. Compromise was already made to the point of when we got the law in the first place. So no more compromising on the data. No more compromising on the truth. No more compromising on the law. No more compromising on our constitutional rights. That's how I would answer that.
And I like the term reject the premise. So that's a very powerful thing. When somebody comes with a concept of here's an idea that we need to promote, and we recognize what it is as a compromise on our rights. Just reject the premise that you have a right to even do it in the first place. So instead of arguing, there's a lot of data you could go and argue, just to cut it off right to start out with, say, I reject the premise that we even have the right to do any of these things.
So to answer the question 2, will you update your large FAQ from 417 with info about masks, termination of state of emergency, etc.? I'm not going to change that document because that would get confusing, because there's already enough copies that have been sent out that people would not realize that there's necessarily 2 copies or an updated version. What I will do, though, is, like I said, there's already a document out there that has all the CDC information that we've been talking about. I am going to put information, post something specifically about masks. I'm sorry, I'm going to make myself a note here, but okay, so I will be putting information out specifically about masks, the medical side of things that we've kind of briefly talked about here, the legal side of things that we briefly talked about here, so there'll be something specific about that so you know what you're looking for and you can find it. I'm going to be putting something out specifically about churches. I've had a lot of pastors reach out to me and want to know what their rights are and how they can re-engage in Bible studies or fellowship or church services or what that would look like or when they can do it. The answer is do it all and do it now, and do it according to what you believe God's will is. But the longer answer I will definitely put into detail, and that will be available on the website and on my Facebook page. And then I'm going to put something together that specifically addresses the fact that we're free now. There are no executive orders currently in place, and I'm going to go through all the law on that, and and put a summary in there so people can see that bigger picture thing, but then also can get into the weeds on all the details. So that will be there. And then I'm going to put some information about the updated medical information, the data, the statistics, the numbers on deaths, and what's going on specifically here in Michigan with what's going on nationwide. And lastly, I'm going to put out an informational piece on Senate Bill 858. Just look at the videos from the fun time we had at the Capitol inside on Thursday. But there's some information that we need to talk about there. Now, the governor has said she's going to veto it. She may have already done that. I guess there's so much I don't know that specific detail. But there's definitely some information that I will be letting you guys know about with that. So there's some additional things that we'll be working on, yes, but to answer you, it's not going to be updated in that original big document. And at this point, it's probably not going to be all in one big document because, let's be honest, I'm the only nerd that wants to read something like that in that much detail. So it's going to just be broken down into separate PDFs that I can send to people, and that will be available on my Facebook page. I'll also try to remember to put it on my Katherine Henry for Michigan, which is the professional side of my Facebook presence, as well as the stopcovidchaos.com. It'll be on there as well. So that answers that question, and then I want to make sure I get back to so lawsuit. The lawsuit, the question was about it's going to be too long, and couldn't it take the X number of days before the whole thing gets done in court, and how's that going to work? Well, yeah, again, I haven't seen the actual claim that the Speaker of the House plans on filing. So I don't know what the particular cause of action is going to be, and therefore I don't know what the procedure would look like, so therefore I don't know the time frame. It doesn't matter though. What I'm telling you is let that process ride out and know that you have your rights now. If you act like you have to wait for a court to give you your rights that you already have, then you've already lost them. Just say goodbye to them. You're not getting them back. If you are going to, however, use civil obedience, follow the laws that we already have on our books, and let the court stuff just, fall as it may, great. That's what we can do. So I don't advise you to stress about how long the lawsuit takes. What I would stress you a couple things. One, make sure that you are advocating for totally open access to that court hearing. No more Zoom hearing crap. You make sure that you have your voice heard with the Supreme Court and with the legislature, that you want any of those, and the governor's office. It doesn't matter what side of this you're on. You could be totally in Gretchen Whitmer's corner on this. You should want to see exactly how they're going to decide this. You should want to have access to that. That Supreme Court building needs to be open. These justices need to not be deciding things from their basements anymore. They need to be getting all fully dressed and back in the Supreme Court building. We need to have open access to our judicial system top to bottom, but that certainly is going to impact. This isn't just like a divorce hearing that a lot of people have been having on Zoom because, well, both parties consented and it's okay, we just want to keep things rolling. No, this is basically a representative of the state, and a representative of the state, no matter what, all 10 million of us, or just under 10 million of us, are being represented in this. We all are a party to that cause of action. We all have the right to participate. So Governor Whitmer and Lee Chatfield cannot procedurally just say, well, we agree to do a Zoom meeting, no problem. No.
Katherine, well, first of all, I just want to reiterate so this doesn't get lost, what I'm hearing and what's in my heart is just to remember that quit waiting for the legislature. You more so now than ever before, the battle's in your yard, your own actions. It's there. You take care of your business. Quit waiting for the legislature and stuff. Just a quick question is, in my mind, wouldn't it be reasonable to have like a cease and desist, to tell her to say stop doing what you're doing, instead of waiting for it to play out? Wouldn't it be reasonable for a judge to weigh in and say, hey, no, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing what you're doing.
it would be reasonable, and right there, some viewers are probably going to start typing about the Court of Claims interim order about a temporary restraining order. Just so you guys know, that was issued before the state of emergency and state of disaster were declared as terminated, number one. Number two, it did not finally resolve the entire case. The case is still pending. Number three, my understanding, I have it printed somewhere here, but I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, is that the discussion was actually very narrowly tailored to the 1976 provisions and did not actually talk about the 1945 provisions. I might have that backwards. I think that's accurate though. And so there's some key differences and key things that are done. So for all of you who think that particular judge was pronouncing that the law of the land in Michigan is that this governor can just do whatever she wants and that these executive orders are totally legal, you just made about 12 leaps too many from what that order actually did and what that judge actually said. Now, I'm not going to tell you what that judge would do today if he was given the same argument, but given how things have changed, because I don't know, right? We can never predict what a judge would do. But I do want you to keep in mind that what that judge did, it cannot be extrapolated to, well, that obviously means she has the authority to have these executive orders today. So I think it would be reasonable for the judicial branch to step in as one of those parts of checks and balances to say, enough is enough, you've overstepped your bounds, we need to have this resolved. But I think that's going to come. So,
or does it have to be initiated in the House, or can a business person do something? Can they come from an individual?
Actually, the order I was talking about came out of a case where a small handful of business owners did file a private suit against her. In fact, there are multiple suits pending right now. I believe there's some in both state and federal court against her, and there should be many, many more.
This is a legal question here, I guess. Is a cease and desist different than this lawsuit? Because I'm hearing this lawsuit taking forever. I'm saying, wouldn't it be like a restraining order, if you will? And
that's what this one was.
That's what it was. But
yeah.
I'm just saying, can't it just be a very expedient thing where just say, hey, stop. You're out of bounds and you need to stop. You can't just continue going and doing what you're doing until this case that you just referenced has time to litigate out. Because how much damage is going to be done while we're playing around? Excuse me, sorry for the disrespect of the legal.
No, that's fine. No, I get it, and that's the whole point of why you would ask for something akin to a temporary restraining order or a preliminary injunction, because when you have some damage that might be caused in the interim while you're sorting it out, you need to be able to have something in place, and that's that mechanism. There does have to be some sort of underlying cause of action or case that the court is handling, because it's not like Bridget McCormick, our Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, is just going to walk over to Gretchen's office and say, now stop it.
You don't think so?
There's really no authority for her to do that, even if she decided she wanted to.
Gotcha.
It does have to go through a proper process, because otherwise, if at any point in time the members of the judiciary could just go over to the executive branch and say, nope, we're going to put you in your place, and you just have to stop there, and there's no proper procedure for doing that, then they would then be the ones exercising this unilateral authority that does not belong in our system. So the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch each have a role to play in this. But while that all pans out, please make sure that you are using due diligence and exercising your statutory and constitutional rights right now without waiting, but doing so with respect and showing others the truth in love and kindness.
So I want to chime in really quick here, speaking to the individuals and bringing my flavor to this. That irritates me to no end, okay? There's a sense of urgency. People are losing their businesses. Major damage is being done. So while all of this is going on, I'm just telling you, you right now, open your business, okay? Go into the store without your mask. Start acting normal. If you're a pastor, have church, for Pete's sake. I mean, come on, people.
For my
Black
sake.
Road Regiment, please step in, get her done. So it's actually pretty simple. In the grants, the fight is actually pretty simple, and the good news is you get to participate.
So I do want to answer a quick question. Somebody asked, should we be contacting our legislators? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you want to have specifics, though, if you want to know, have that arsenal so that when you call them, and if your legislator happens to be one that says, we have to follow these stay-at-home orders, they're not, they're legal. Or your state rep says, or senator says, she doesn't have the legal authority to do what she did because we did not vote to extend, but we really just have to wait to see how the court, settles all this. We have to keep following them in the meantime. If that's the case, you probably should want to be equipped with the actual law, with the full explanation so that you know how to respond to those things, because several people have reached out to me saying, well, hey, I followed up on this one little piece that I heard you say, and then I didn't really look at the other pieces you wrote, and then when I contacted my state rep, they said, well, yeah, so there's this thing, right? So they came back with she can do, follow, the 1945 Act without even considering the 1976 Act or something like that. Look at all of it ahead of time before you contact them so that you can have that information. I would even suggest looking at the information I'm putting out that's not the legal information, but the actual data and the facts about the true death statistics, the masks. So you just need to have that truth for yourself so you can know that you're doing the right thing. Don't take my word for it. Look at the information yourself, and then you're more equipped to have those conversations with your legislators and your government leaders. I want you to call your city manager. I want you to talk to your city council member. I want you to talk to your township trustee. I want you to talk to your township clerk, your county clerk. Who else? I mean,
your mayor.
Your mayor.
Sheriff.
Your sheriff, your prosecuting attorney. I want you to talk to all of these people that are paid for by your tax dollars to do a job to either protect or serve you in some way. With a governmental function. I want you to reach out to them. Don't attack them. Don't scream and yell at them. Don't swear at them. Do not call them names. It doesn't matter how stubborn they are. Don't do that. What you can do is provide them with the truth. And what you can do is remain calm and ask them to listen to you. And trust that if we all work in this together and we do it the right way and we're following God's will for what we're supposed to be doing, it's going to work out the way that it's supposed to work out, okay? But don't sit on your butt either, just expecting God to just do it all for you. He wants you to take action in a good way.
Oh, it's getting to be very long,
okay.
So take 5 each and be done.
Just really quick, I want to say that, again, going off what Katherine said, don't get in the way of your argument. The truth is actually the strongest weapon, and if you act out in an unbecoming way, then all of a sudden you become the focus instead of the truth. So that's something to keep in mind. But you will be criticized and so on and so forth. But just try not to give as much ammunition to them as possible. One thing I encourage my fellow countrymen to do during this time is understanding incrementalism and the importance of what happens during this time frame. Give it next year, 5 years, 10 years, the next generation or 2 generations. I'm very compelled to make a point that I don't just want half of my freedom back, and I don't even want to just be back to all of my freedom. I actually do want to have the record set straight. Now that's a tall order. We aren't even talking about that. I want, really what I expect out of the legislators is a resetting, an acknowledgement for the misdeeds that were done. Even you can always say, hey, there's a good intention, all right? I'll give that. I don't believe it. But the point is there was a series of mistakes, grievances that happened. And speaking of grievances, I think of the Declaration of Independence. And again, Katherine has spent a good deal of time talking about law and everything. I am a declarationist, even more so than a constitutionalist. And this is the point that I want to make to you. And this helps keep our situation is very clear. There's a lot of legislative matters talked about, but truly, good grief. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to drop you. I got your attention, didn't I? Wake up! So, listen. Our rights come from our Creator. This is why we have government, to protect our God-given right to life, liberty, or property. So the thing that's being brought to us by our government, does it protect those rights or does it infringe on those rights? It's very simple, and you can always, instead of worrying about understanding all of this legalese, you can revert back to that, to reassert who you are as an American and as a child of God. You have rights of life, liberty, and property, and they are not to infringe on those rights. So I'm just trying to help equip you when you go into these arenas, so that we as conservatives don't like not looking informed. We don't like being wrong, and it can intimidate us to where we won't enter in. And so to the degree that you have to, just start out with a very basic premise of where our laws come from and why we have government.
So, like I said, I think that whether you're on the side of understanding, gosh, this feels wrong, this has gone on way too long, the government's outside of their bounds, the governor shouldn't be able to do this, I know it's wrong, I know it's not legal. Whether you're on that side of things, whether you're in the middle going, oh, I just don't like getting into drama, I don't like politics, or whether you're on the other side and you're like, I know that the governor has the right to do this because she told me it's constitutional, and she told me she's relying on the 1945 statute, and she tells me that the death numbers are so high, we have over 4,000 people dead from COVID-19 here. Doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on. I want you to really do the work to think about this, more so than any other time, certainly in my life, but probably for generations. We have the need and the ability to double check this information. So don't take my word for it. But also, if you're on that other side, don't automatically assume because you don't like me or you don't like what I fight for or what I stand for that everything I'm talking about is automatically false. Either way, go to the documents. Look at the law as I've laid it out in that bigger document. Look at the factual information, the death statistics, the information on masks, the information on COVID-19 in relation to the other causes of death. Look at the information I put out there as it relates to the correspondence between states that have lockdown orders and states that don't. Take a look at the actual sources. I gave you every single source. I tell you this exact URL from the CDC or from Michigan.gov or whatever the source is that I got that from. Double check that information and let it sink in. And above all else, please pray. I ask that you pray for the people that are bent on attacking others, whatever side. I ask that you pray for them, that they can have clarity and understanding to know that that's not the way that they should be handling this. Pray for yourself that you know exactly what it is that you need to do in that next moment. You're not going to know what you need to do overall, but know that, just pray that you understand just what that next thing is that you need to do. And do pray for our leaders. Pray for Gretchen Whitmer. Pray for Lee Chatfield. Pray for Mike Shirkey. Pray for the Michigan Supreme Court. Pray for all those people that are treating COVID-19 patients. Don't hold hatred and anger in for any of these people, no matter what side of this issue you're on. Just try to be that truth and that light out there, and know that you don't have to just sit in a corner and wait for somebody to give you your rights back. That's what I would ask you to do. And just keep checking stopcovidchaos.com for updates as they come, and I'm going to keep the information coming as quickly as I can.
Maybe we should close in prayer real quick.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time. Father, first of all, we thank you for wanting to even partner with us. Father, you're an amazing God, and sometimes it's hard to understand why you want to. We know you value our relationship together. But Father, we ask that you guide our steps during this time, that you would give us the wisdom, Father. And regarding this video, Father, that anything that is appropriate, move forward, and anything that's not appropriate, to stop.
That the information would purposely hit where it needs to hit and impact where it needs to impact.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, Father, we pray that the information would go where it needs to go, and that this would be used for your purpose and be effective, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Girly saying, okay, it's been almost 2.5 hours.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
ran it simultaneously on MMGA, so that's when he was